Greeting interwebs, I'm Jacob King, and I'm here to show off a project I've been working on called Paper Mario Sweet Expedition. If you're already familiar with the Paper Mario game jam that happened a while ago, this will seem familiar. I decided to use the game jam to learn Star Rod and finally get into Paper Mario modding. Though through a combination of that being the first time I've ever modded Paper Mario, and making the last minute decision to trim out a good chunk of Sweet Expedition to make it better fit into the stream that was supposed to present them, I kind of felt some regret with releasing that version of Sweet Expedition the way it was. So I decided sometime between then and when I finally finished Sweet Expedition, I wanted to make a video showing off what it's like in between. About as close as I can get to where the mod would be in an ideal scenario that I didn't have to cut anything for time, but there was still some realization that there was only a certain time frame that I could work on it. So this is far from final of what Sweet Expedition will look like in time of release, but because I'm not sure if it'll be long enough or different enough to justify a second playthrough, I don't think I'm going to be releasing this version of Sweet Expedition publicly. And for similar reasons, I want to have a spoiler warning before starting this playthrough. While the majority of elements, including story and gameplay elements, are very similar to the game jam release of Sweet Expedition, I'm not sure if they'll be radically different from the final release of Sweet Expedition. So if you're in that sweet middle ground of not having played the game jam release, but looking forward to playing the final release, I would advise against watching these videos. Because while there's still a lot of elements I plan to add into Sweet Expedition that would make for watching this video and then playing the final game different experiences to some degree, there's also a lot of elements that I'm not sure are going to get updated, like the story and maybe even the maps. Also, another good example is that I feel pretty confident that the partner moves are finalized. So there's another good example. I'll talk more when we're in the video itself, but I figured that obviously the spoiler warning would be most appropriate before the spoilers. Okay, I blabbled on pretty long as is. Let's get into the game proper. So the beginning here is not too different from the game jam release. Kooper, Mario, and Colorado make their way to Glace Islands to look for the legendary treasure bestowed within Glace Island itself. Colorado is still Colorado, with not knowing the difference between whales and tunas, and being obsessed with treasure to an unhealthy degree. And yeah, this is still here too. It just seemed like a perfect way to actually introduce Mario to a bunch of items and badges at once, without making him do a pop-up presentation for each one of them. Only downside is that now that Colorado kit is just sitting in the key items, and it's completely pointless for the rest of the mod. As I find more and more places to put some badges, I'm kind of wondering if that'll still be necessary, but I'll think more about it if it ever gets to that point. New though is Kooper having a little bit of extra dialogue. I'm already thinking of ways to trim this down a little, but mostly is one, Kooper telling you that you have Goombario with you as well, just in case you didn't catch on soon enough during the game jam release. Also, Kooper very unsubtly pushing you towards the venture of Colorado. Also, there's apparently a patch that makes that menu go by quicker. Maybe if I actually say it in a video, I'll actually remember to ask about that patch. By the way, this is your starting badge setup. It may be a little weird to some people that I give quick change by default, but me and quick change are just kind of irreceptible. Paper Mario doesn't really feel like Paper Mario to me personally, until I have free access to my partners. The concept of using just one partner for an entire battle is kind of foreign to me. I've done it, but it always feels off when I do. Also, why is less BP? If I feel it's too broken, I can always bump it back up later, but for now I'm willing to work around it balancing wise. As I come up with more fun ideas to hide items and justify Cooper being in this chapter, I might make quick change not available by default, but it will be available early on one way or another. Speaking of Cooper, looks like I forgot to take that last sentence out since updating the moves. But yeah, even took the time to update the little character descriptions to better reflect the fact this is a different adventure. It's a nice way to add a little storytelling and characterization without forcing players to sit through dialogue to go through it. Part of the reason why I got so carried away with Tattle in the Game Jam release too. I'd love to talk more about that and completely ignore this random heart block I added, but I think this is more important to talk about. This was not something intended for the Game Jam release at all. Cooper being useful, not Dodge Master. Dodge Master was always intended to be here. After doing the Game Jam, I kind of realized that Cooper was just there throughout the whole adventure, so I've been adding plenty of puzzles within these maps to make use out of Cooper's abilities. I might be skipping a lot of them in this playthrough, just because it wasn't something initially planned during the Game Jam development period, but you can expect to find a lot of surprises through creative use of Shell Shot. Speaking of surprises, remember when Cooper blatantly told us to follow after Colorado and not go this way? Well, you still can, so I figure I'd show what happens if you do. Also, this might be a good time to bring up, I learned how to make save blocks and heart blocks in between Game Jam and now. So I took advantage of that. Maybe I'll talk a little bit more about it later, but we got a lot happening right now, including probably one of the more controversial moments of the Game Jam release of Sweet Expedition. Just the fact that you can do this technically mini-boss, but not really, as your very first fight in the game. Complete oversight on my end, that players could actually even come here in the first place, and part of the reason of adding Cooper's extra dialogue was to, at the very least, communicate to the player they could be in trouble if they deviate from the main path. Biggest reason I haven't removed it yet was that I got a small handful of positive feedback that appreciated a moment of extra challenge. But even then, there's probably a better way to design something like that without completely alienating people that accidentally stumble into it. So I got some food for thought later on down the line. All this talk about food's got me hungry. Why don't we see what's in the coconut tree? Oh hey, that's not quite a coconut. Replacing basically every coconut tree is this new item called the Cocoa Bean. Well, new for people who haven't played the Game Jam version. It's your basic healing item, but I figure it was a nice twist on the typical coconut. Plus having free access to unlimited healing early on, I figured would be good for easing the player into the mod. Kind of like how I have the save blocks and the heart blocks. The extra save points help assure that you don't lose a ton of progress just because you had one bad battle. Like how this battle actually ended up taking me 2 attempts because 1, I got cocky and tried to show off, and 2, I completely forgot the nerf I made, or should I say the buff I made to an enemy in between the Game Jam version and now. I guess I'll leave this in so you can see the tails in action. It might be too subtle to tell, but I did try to condense the tattles, because a very common criticism I got with Sweet Expedition initially was the tattles were way too long, and while I was so fixated on the concept of yeah, that's a flat out lie. How Bazaps used to work was that you'd be able to take them out in one shot with a multi-bounce even though they have 4 HP because they are weak to jump. That is no longer relevant. I think all their other elemental weaknesses and resistances still apply. That being said, there is still a way to take out the Bazaps without dedicating one attack to them. You'll get to see that strat in action soon enough, though I just remembered. The real reason I died to this fight the first attempt wasn't because I was trying to show off my moves. I was trying to show off the enemy's moves, very much underestimating how devastating they can be if left unintended. Between like the Bazap's high attack, the Fuzzy's ability to dizzy you and make your attacks completely useless. It is an easy first fight if you're aggressive, but if you mess around, it can really get you. That being said, I showed off Gubario's head bonk, I showed off his tattle. I think it's time to show off His new ability for Sweet Expedition, Invigorate, is basically Power Rush, but on Goombario. So it's not too remarkable, but especially in combination with Multi-Bounce, I find it pretty handy. Especially early on when we don't really have too many other AoE attacking options for Mario. We didn't exactly get too much time to see Goombario in action, but I'm pretty sure later on I dedicated a couple battles specifically just to show off the partners. Anyways, this might be a little different. I kinda got this thing going on in Paper Mario mods where I find it pretty neat to add in little rewards for just doing a good deed here and there. Just the concept of something being optional, but being rewarded for doing something nice, just sounds nice. Especially since these mods are small, so the rewards don't have to be spread as thin. I am aware of the inevitable concern about making a badge missable, but don't worry, I already have something in mind to assure that it's not completely missable. You'll just have to wait until later to get it, if you don't do that right away. Anyways, welcome to Glaze Village. Don't mind the sign, it's a work in progress. Wanted to keep that in for this video because I really want to emphasize the fact that I did not have any interest in modding textures for the Game Jam release. But that was a funny little joke that if I would have known how to make textures, I probably would have done in the Game Jam release regardless, so... sometime after the release of this video, maybe I'll tease a little more of how that sign's gotten a bit of a makeover since this video. Things have been happening fast. Like, the moment I finished recording, I immediately was all ready to go with working on Sweet Expedition proper. Already, there's quite a few visual changes made that I'm looking forward to sharing in more detail. Looks like Goombario's not the first Goomba to visit Glaze Village. And looks like word got around about the marketing, we'll say, that Glaze Village likes to take advantage of. Essentially how things work on Glaze Village, the village leader is in charge of keeping the island safe and learning about the history and past, while the village leader's friend takes care of tourism and keeping the island economical. This plays zero role into the plot of Sweet Expedition, but I figure it's just a little extra flavor text to entertain the people that were curious. That being said though, it looks like the village leader was expecting us in Colorado. Maybe even prepared a friend to help us along the way. Things aren't quite ready yet, so we'll have to come back to the village leader once we check up on Colorado. With how bold, let's say, Colorado could be, it's probably a bad idea that I'm talking to literally every Yoshi on the village instead of pursuing him right away, but it's an RPG. What's the worst that can happen with a little baffling around and getting to know the locals? I did cut out a lot of that talking and a lot of Goombario's tattles, but I wanted to leave at least a few in the commentary because this is all new content technically. This is all stuff I had ready to go for the Game Jam release, but I decided to change the programming last minute to immediately jump to where the kids are missing. And a good chunk of the reason why I felt that I kind of rushed it was because I put all the time and care into this section during the Game Jam development time. And all the stuff that you actually saw in the Game Jam was added in last minute so that there would at least be some non-vanilla dialogue to be seen. Which is a shame that I still can't quite get over because a lot of people's first impressions of Sweet Expedition are going to be without this section, and I really felt that even though technically all these are optional, it really helps set the tone for the game better to actually get to talk to these NPCs before everyone's in a panic. Yeah, you can kind of tell that I had fun with Goombario's tattles, with the Yoshis in particular. There's references to the original Paper Mario, like Goombario reminiscing on their past adventure, Mario commenting about Yoshis in different ways. One comment in particular I guess I'm saving for the full uncommentated playthrough. Cause for this commentated playthrough I'm just trying to focus on the dialogue and tattles that I feel add to, that are either plot relevant or add to the tone of Sweet Expedition. And anything more optional just there for the fun of it. I'm gonna say for an uncommented video that I plan on uploading unlisted after all these commentated playthroughs are up on the channel. I'm leaning towards this being a 3-part commentated series, but debating whether to upload these once a month or every other week. Currently leaning towards the latter, but I'll be sure to make like a community post / post on social media by the time this comes out with a more definite plan. Yeah, moments like this where you can actually meet Chai, Rush, and the Sugar Sparkies in advance, get a better idea of what Chai's personality is like, and aren't just left wondering what the heck she's doing up in the tree besides the fact that that's what Sushi did in Lava Lava Island. And in case it's not obvious, the justification is that Chai is a bit more of a coward compared to Sushi, where she's a lot more reserved, cares about her friends, but rather be safe than sorry. See, she just wants to play in the village because the village is where it's safe. Meanwhile, Rush and the Sugar Sparkies are much more adventurous and outgoing. They are sick and tired of being in the village and they want to get out here right now. And apparently Rush is taking charge of everyone's boredom, plotting up something in mind. If only we had a framework from a more vanilla experience to predict exactly what's gonna happen. But still, it's fun to add my own twist to the formula via the writing. By the way, the reason it's called the Sour Patch 6 is because Chai is a part of the group. Chai is, unlike Sushi being the babysitter, Chai is actually part of the circle of friends, and it's kind of hard to tell in the design since it is just a palette swap of Sushi, I admit. But Chai is actually around the same age as these Sugar Sparky kids. Maybe if I'm ambitious enough, that's something I can play around with. Speaking of playing around with things, this is a little different and not really intended for the Game Jam release, but it was an idea that I kind of got so early on that I couldn't wait until making this video to start implementing it, and I think it'll make for a more entertaining video later on. Won't spoil what, but for right now, I'm just gonna point out that it's kind of suspicious that there's one less Raven up here than normal. And just go, and leave it at that. Oh, I completely forgot that Gumbario's title was that. Wow, why? Anyways, I don't think I ever did the map tile for this place. Yeah, they certainly got the tropical theme down. We got a nice toad house to rent our adventure in. Plus there's a grand chocolate volcano to the east, or so they say. Between you and me, I think it's just some big tourist trap. Guess which part of the title was written first? The village friend, or this? Text is going a little bit faster than I thought. I thought this would be the one thing I could actually read out loud, but basically there's a lot going on here because I try to inject both personality and information into one title. Maybe it's a little too long, but between the fact that the shop is different, really trying to hint to the player that random item that they got taking up space in their inventory should just be sold ASAP. There's a lot that I wanted to convey in that one title, so I don't see it changing in the future, especially because it's technically optional to go for that title, but I can understand the benefit to trying to bridge it somehow and maybe spread out that information to somewhere else. Again, it's more so something I'm saying out loud, with the hopes that I actually renumber to consider it. Wow, I almost completely talked over the shop without bringing any attention to it. Well, at least I'm going slow enough that you can see everything there. Most of it is specialized HP and FP healing items. Two items of note that I'll try to show off at least once in our adventure are the Coco Kaboom and it's a snowman doll. I think I called it Chili Doll in this mod just to emphasize the fact that it plays a little differently than the standard snowman's doll. Again, I think we'll see more of that in action later. That also reminds me, I wanted to actually do something with the heart tart. And now that I'm actually a little more familiar of how to make the images work without bugging out, I think I got no excuse not to actually go and mess around with that. I guess I just forgot between Game Jam and this video. That being said, thank you all for all your patience while I went through the game's lore. It's time for another battle. It's been way too long, and these are brand new enemies to play around with. Well, new for Sweet Expedition. This tale is probably a good example of how I bridge it. Like, I have all the information on the first tale, including weakness. No more 10-page paragraphs describing every little detail, weakness, and resistance. That being said, I haven't talked too much about the enemies in Sweet Expedition themselves, have I? Well, the Minty guys here are pretty much spear guys with a few little twists. Like, their attacks put you to sleep. It was originally all their attacks, but I decided to narrow it down to just their spear throwing one because in combination with this enemy, the Sweetie Daisy, it felt a bit overkill to have so much sleeping in one battle. So instead, the the Minty guys, have 1 point of defense. They're one of 2 enemies in all Sweet Expedition, at least so far, to have the defense point. And they're also one of the few enemies in Sweet Expedition that are actually immune to poison. I can hear it now. Jackie K, why is that relevant? In Paper Mario, you can't poison enemies. They can only poison you. Well, more on that later. For now, I think I'm realizing that this is the battle where I really try to show off Cooper's capabilities in combat. And a lot of these are drastically different from the Game Jam release, so definitely want to put some extra emphasis on things like Snicker Shot, same as the Game Jam release where it's basically Spin Smash. It can be pretty situational when it's really useful, but at least it's free. Does come with the downside of, if I'm going to have Spin Smash on Cooper's default attack, then what's the point of having the badge at all? And honestly, I'm still trying to work out a solution to that. I got some ideas of possibly maybe making a more powerful move replace Spin Smash, but you haven't heard it from me. This is all speculation as far as you're concerned. Next we have Spin Shot, aka LP Curse coming back to haunt me. What it's supposed to do is you hit an enemy, it spins in the air, and they get dizzy. However, I'm not quite sure if that didn't work because he's immune to dizzy, or because I didn't program it right. And I still have yet to look into what it is. It's probably just that he's really resilient to dizzy. I should definitely look into that before the final release. Because I don't want every enemy to be weak to dizzy, but I know specifically when recording this playthrough, I could not remember for the life of me what enemies were weak to dizzy and which ones were not. And I probably should double check to make sure there's at least a couple enemies weak to dizzy, because otherwise what's the point in the move? Spin Shot has a less obvious secondary effect, but we'll get more to that later, I can promise that much. Anyways, defense here makes this a good opportunity to use Pierce Shell. It's basically Power Shell, but ignores all defense. Might get a little bit more use out of that in a group with more of these guys than just the one, but at least I got to use it in one battle, if nothing else. But what did I do to finish him off? Because I really want to finish him off in one turn with how low of health I am, but I don't know if I really got an option that really lets me do so. At least with Cooper. Thank goodness we have Quick Change. It's a bit of a shame because, kinda like with Goombario, we did not get a chance to show off Cooper's strongest skill, but unlike Goombario's skill, Cooper's is a little less situational, so I'm sure we'll have more opportunities to show it off. Goombario's nuclear bunk is still just as strong as it was in the Game Jam release, but there has been some changes made to it to make it a little more situational. By the way, tangenting to things I cut last minute for the Game Jam release, this was where you're supposed to get the Life Shroom. Because of the fact that this whole scene wouldn't exist, if you skip right to the Yoshi Kid scene, I basically abridged this whole scene between Colorado giving you the reward if you help him, the whole scene about, wait, we should go talk to the elder instead, I bridged that all to the beach scene with Colorado. And again, like, this isn't as bad as what I was talking about before, but I did miss the fact of this whole scene. I was really proud of myself that I was able to actually program a custom swap like that. But I couldn't get it to work for the beach scene, so I just decided to make custom dialogue whether you had Goombario or Cooper out. Don't worry, we're still going to see branching dialogue depending on your partner, but we'll get more into that later on. For this scene in particular though, I really wanted to make sure Cooper was out for it because Cooper's the one that's been Colorado's voice of reason ever since Paper Mario 1 ended, at least in the canon of Sweet Expedition. By the way, no Jam and Jelly behind the tree. I totally did not forget that Jam and Jelly ever existed in there because I am totally a professional and hardcore enough of a Paper Mario fan to remember where every item exists in the game. Ironically enough, I don't really care about the fact that it was practically a free FP healing item. The part that I consider an oversight was the fact that you could just resell it at the shop and just completely whack the economy with how much people frickin' buy Jam and Jellies for, apparently. It's fine, I know how to adjust prices if it comes to it, I think. And more importantly, there's going to be plenty of hidden goodies in Sweet Expedition that didn't even exist on Lava Lava Island. So this is the state where the village would have been at when we got here the first time in the Sweet Expedition release. So you're basically caught up on the main thing that I wanted to showcase in the Game Jam release, but decided to cut last minute to try to make the game shorter than it actually was. That being said, there's still a few surprises sprinkled about. Things that even those that are already familiar with the Game Jam release are going to find new. However, I think I'm going to save all that for the next video. Things like the new partners of Sweet Expedition, a new move, and maybe a new friend? We'll find out for sure next time. Until then, take care.